Welcome to the Animal Aspirations podcast. In this episode, we speak to two vet students from the RVC as we talk about their journey to vet school. We talk about the pressures from school, following your dreams, and the challenges that we faced along the way. We break down some of our best advice for applying to UCAS, what you should focus on in your personal statement, how to get work experience in the city, and how to prepare for your interview. We also discuss the role that Animal Aspirations can play in your journey. If you're thinking about applying to a STEM course but are feeling a bit overwhelmed, then this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Steph and I have recently just graduated as a vet. I was on the 5-year veterinary medicine programme, but I also came via the Gateway programme, which is a foundation year just before. So in total, I've done a lovely long 6 years.
I'm Jahnavi. I'm on the BVet med course as well. I've just finished my intercalating year, so I'm going into 3rd year in September.
Lovely. And I just wanted to ask, what got you to the RVC, or what inspired you to do a biology type degree course?
I think for me, so I was one of those people that had access to animals growing up. My dad kept a lot of weird and wonderful pets in our back garden in North London, and that for me really kind of honed in on my experience with animals, and also made me feel like I could see myself working with animals or doing something with animals. I didn't know I wanted to be a vet though. I think when I was younger, people would tell me oh, you always said you wanted to be a vet, because I think that's the only career that people think immediately goes with working with animals. But I was like, yeah, I want to work with animals. And then when I got to school, I was like, I do really like science, and I was actually quite good with sciences, and particularly like biology and things like that. But I also was very creative driven and artistic, and that was also very conflicting, because I loved my drawing, I love my music at the same time, especially early secondary school, and you think you can do literally everything, and you're picking your GCSEs and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, for me, I at least I was quite lucky. I did have exposure, but like I said, I didn't know completely that I wanted to be a vet, but I had a feeling that I really wanted to know more about the world. You watch so many nature documentaries, everyone loves David Attenborough documentaries, and I used to have old style vetting programs back in the early 2000s and that were on TV, and I'd be like, oh my god, this is really cool, this is what I really want to do. So it's I think it's multifactorial, but there aren't any vets in my family. There's no one that I necessarily had links with into it, other than the experiences I had with my dad.
Oh, that's so interesting. I feel like a lot of people can relate. I was very torn between all of my A-level subjects. I was I don't know which career path I feel like I'm going down. So I think that's a really interesting experience. And Jahnavi?
Well, I came to vet school and spoke to people, and they literally, a lot of people were I wanted to be a vet since I was 4 or something. So it's interesting to hear that you, even though you've had that exposure to animals, you didn't know that. My route was a bit different. I didn't know what I wanted to do really. Even at A-level, I kind of thought that I wanted to do biology research or something, because I loved biology. That was my favorite subject. And again, I'd watched so many David Attenborough documentaries, and I loved animals, but I have a dog, but I'd never really been around other animals that much. And I spoke to a friend who wanted to do vet med, and she was just telling me about all the work experience she'd done. And I was like, okay, I'll book a week of work experience at the vet. I'll do one at a GP as well, because a doctor seems the natural progression from biology. And I just did the vet work experience and cancelled the GP one. I was like, that's it, I'm sold. This is what I want to do. So it was quite an instant thing once I'd got into that environment, but until I'd been in that environment, I didn't really consider it.
Oh, that's really interesting. I feel like a lot of people can relate between being torn between medicine and vet med, the sort of medical fields, but which path to go down. So that's really interesting.
I think a lot of schools would push people to kind of you go down a traditional route, but then when you're the one standalone person, it's I want to be a vet. They literally come round every blue moon. There was really then my teachers were trying to put me in contact with someone who was a vet potentially 2 years above me, and it is just kind of you couldn't really find a link, so you end up feeling quite unique, but also a little bit stranded sometimes.
Yeah.
I think hopefully schools are getting a bit better at it, but it's just when the information isn't like right there for them.
Exactly. And that leads me on to my next question. What was your application process like? Because obviously you just said that your school, it's difficult for schools if they have like one student every 4 years to have resources like they do when they're helping medicine students. So did you feel like you just kind of had to figure it out yourself and just like research?
Yeah, it was really strange because, like I said, so my parents necessarily like we've kept dogs, we've kept other animals and things, but they weren't necessarily people with degrees. Like I'm the first person in my family to go to university, and so when I was applying, it's very much like I am the guinea pig. I have 2 younger sisters as well, and so one of them's at uni as well, and so it's nice they've already been through the process with me. But it was that very much like I've got to be the one finding my work experience. I've got to be the one looking up, checking if I need to do like the medical entrance exams, because some of the unis at the time still accepted them. So I think it was Cambridge and RVC was still taking them. I had to go and you're writing the emails, doing the phone calls, trying to source these places. And it is a lot. Like I think back and I'm like, well, as a 15, 16-year-old, it's a lot of responsibility, and you having to commit and show your teachers that you're committing to a career that early. It's, and depending on your area and what school you're from, and sort of the general aspirations of students at a school, I think sometimes they want to support the students that they think are going to do well, and I think they should obviously make sure that they're doing the best for everyone regardless of what they want to do. Not everyone wants to go to university, not everyone wants to go, people want to go straight into work, people want to do apprenticeships, people should be allowed to do what they want. But especially for something like this, which was so vocational, there wasn't really much else they could do other than encourage me. And I remember there was a point, I know we'll get onto it a little bit later on about like A levels and things, but there was a point where like my A levels weren't going too well, and they were asking me, like, what do you want to do? And you have to sit there and be like, well, actually, I have a plan, and this is what I'm going to try and do, and you just need to trust me. And it's that weird balance, especially at A levels and being in sixth form, of like being half treated by like an adult, but also being still treated like a child. So yeah, I did find I definitely had supportive staff members. So there were people that sat down, helped me with my interview practice, people that helped with our personal statements and things like that as well. So I can't doubt those individuals that really did support us. But overall, and I think it's safe to say for a lot of people that go into vet med in particular, there isn't always people with boundless resource and knowledge. You have to be the one that goes out, do the open days, get your work experience, speak to people, start networking when you're really quite young.
Yeah, I think it's a massive jump in personal responsibility from when you're at GCSE stage to when you're at A-level stage. Like, I'm not quite sure. I'm thinking the same thing. I look back and I'm like how did we kind of know what to do? But I don't think I really did. I was really lucky that I had that friend who had known she wanted to be a vet for quite a while, so she kind of gave me some tips. And we also had a med soc at our school, so they did their best. Like I don't think they'd ever seen a vet before, and now they had like 2 vet students, but they tried to like help us out. And then obviously there were teachers involved as well. And yeah, my school was like really heavy with pushing people to go towards university. So for us, I don't think that I ever felt like a lack of support. And obviously you're completely right, like for people who didn't want to do that, I think it was a very different picture. But the support that I had from school it made the process a lot easier. But it was a case of just like massive like information overload, because there are so many different things to consider when you're applying for vet med or any like animal course because of the experience side of it. So yeah, I remember that summer being really chock full with work experience and stuff, so it was hectic. But yeah, the support from the teachers was really good.
What would you recommend to someone who's feeling like overwhelmed by the amount of options and choices? Like, what would you recommend for them to do to try and break it down and make it a bit easier for like making a step-by-step goal to help them on the route to, entering university?
I guess they should just, it is just taking a step back, and maybe even if it's just writing things down on paper and planning, like Jahnavi said as well, like we both seem to have, like, you just end up having this whole run of you like potentially like going and doing Google searches for places, and then you're having to contact places, and you're just chasing it because you know that you've got like your Easter holiday, your summer holiday coming up, and you need to kind of try and book stuff in, and you're also kind of learning it as you're going along. So there isn't any sort of, I don't think there's any blueprint to doing it, but I think whatever people can do to alleviate any stress. And so I think things that help me even now with like planning and organizing stuff, just writing stuff down, making lists, just figuring out who your contacts want to be, when do you need to contact them, maybe even if they've got like a calendar and they could figure out when they've got their Easter holiday, summer holidays, and things like that, and try and figure out, if I contact this place at this time, hopefully I'll be able to fit myself stuff in here, and stuff like that. But just anything to kind of alleviate that. And then I guess there's also worries about and for a lot of the people that we would do outreach to, in terms of like being able to afford transport, like how are you going to get there, accommodation, things like that. But if there are worries about that, then it's always worth raise that in the discussion with the placement that you're potentially going to, and you can be honest with them and explain that like if like I know my parents couldn't ferry me around everywhere, so I was quite limited to places that I could potentially go, but you just kind of have to make the effort and figure out, well, actually there were quite a few places that I'm willing to like maybe go the extra mile of just do the long walking distance to, and that'll be fine. But it is tricky either way. There isn't really a blueprint.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of that. I mean, one massive thing for me was Excel. I love an Excel spreadsheet. So I would literally just like have my categories of like universities, for example, and then the things that were important to me that they offered like along the side, and, very like formulaic in that sense. Because I think that really helped me distinguish between universities that are all very similar in like what they offer, really. So it's really like the tiny differences that make the difference. But work experience also was a big like point to organize, and I would say, like, practically speaking, you should start thinking about like your CV. I'm sure we had to write one when we were in maybe like year 11 or 12, but just thinking about stuff that you've done over the years that isn't animal related or academic related, but just like skills that you've built up on the way. I think that is a really good start in thinking about getting work experience, because you have to sometimes send in a cover letter, or I mean, even when it comes to personal statement, that would be really helpful. So just little things like that. If you can get those things done early, then it kind of helps out later on.
Saying that about CVs, like I had a rolling CV from like about 2014, 2015, so literally just before starting uni, and like I'd filled it in with everything, all the work experience that I've done, because we start with doing that like year 10 work experience, exactly. And even stuff like that, like you can put skills, and hopefully people will have advisors or people at school which explain to them about what transferable skills are and why they're important, and how that feeds into that, and like you say, like how that feeds into writing your personal statement and things like that. But you have opportunities to ask people for help with that, and also you can find like templates and things online, which is brilliant. So you can figure out that way, and potentially, especially with everything that's gone on, a lot of stuff is online now, and you could probably sit and listen to CD workshops and things like that as well, which will help.
I was just gonna say, I think that there's like so many resources online, like on YouTube and things, of like how to build a CV for beginners and that kind of stuff. Even that kind of thing is really helpful if you don't have like immediate access at school, because I'm not sure if all schools do kind of focus on that kind of thing, and it's also important to start early. So if they haven't yet, then you don't want to kind of get there late. So doing your own research is important.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about like doing your own research. So for me, when I was like going through it, I kind of broke it down into the three main sections of the interview process, like the application process, which is like the work experience, the personal statement, and then like the interviews. So we've talked a lot kind of a bit about work experience, but do you remember like what sort of places, because me and Steph, and I don't know about you, Jahnavi, but we're all London based?
Yeah, I'm Essex.
Okay, Essex. So but for me, like I found that the only thing I could really get was cats and dogs, small animals. So for me, I thought the best thing I can do is like, okay, so if I'm limited to cats and dogs, what in this field can I get? I was like, yes, I can get clinical practice, great. What else can I get? Rehoming shelters, brilliant. See where I can go for that. Like I did some stuff with Guide Dogs UK, like helping train guide dogs. I was like, if I can only do small animals, I'm going to make sure I can get the most variety of small animals. Because I remember talking to someone at an open day, and they were like, if you can't get everything, because they have like a huge list, they're like, you can do lambing and you can do, you know, horses. And I was like, yeah, I have access to horses and I have access to small animals, but like farming, lambing, like that's just not something that I physically have any contacts for. I can't, it's exam season, I can't go out and do lambing because I don't live near anywhere. I'd have to like leave my house, and that wasn't something that me and my mum felt comfortable with like at that age. So the best advice that I got for work experience was like just trying to find variety and weeks. Just make sure you have weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So would you remember any of your like pre-vet school placements? Like what sort of things that you went for?
Yeah, so for me, like I said, I had a little blip with my A levels, and so that's when I started having consideration for the gateway course at RVC. But the gateway course at RVC doesn't actually require any work experience. However, because I was also still in the interim of like, I originally was potentially going to apply to the full like the 5-year program, I was still collating work experience anyway. And actually I would say for anyone that it's like with anything, I think even if you're not sure about going for it, offering up a week of your holidays or 2 weeks is still beneficial in any of those sort of animal environments, just to get a taster. Because I even, like, when we've worked as ambassadors, I've said to people as well, like, you know, that if you get a taster in a vet practice, you find out if it's for you or if it's not for you. If you find out it's not for you earlier, it saves you the hassle of worrying about, oh gosh, I'm not really sure, like, you know. And granted, even if you don't have a good experience at one particular place, there's obviously so many places to try, so maybe try it somewhere else instead. But for me, I definitely managed to get a week in clinical practice, and then I'd also managed to get experience at a like a riding stables, which was local to me. I also worked in a dog groomers as well, and that was quite cool. They had a little pet shop next door, so we could wash all the little puppies that they had in the pet shop. And I was like, they're really cute. And what else did I do? And then, so yeah, I was in a similar position to you, Olivia. Like, I don't think my family would have been comfortable sending me out to farms to stay with people. And we didn't have contacts either. We didn't really know anyone. And again, around where I am, like, I'm kind of in a boundary where it's kind of close to the countryside, but not quite. But we're not, because we're still around that Hertfordshire area, there isn't loads of farming. It's not all arable land or anything like that. So what I did was, because I was very keen about attending RVC, I'd already been involved in some of their events and things, and they were running a lambing day at Bolton Park Farm. So I went for that lambing day, and that was really good, because even if it was just a day, it was not necessarily, couldn't be counted for as proper experience. But for me, because I knew that I was doing the gateway course or going for that at that time, I was like, at least I've had a taster of what it's like. And then ever since then, and being on the course, like, I loved going back for lambing. I feel like I have like a minor addiction to going back and just going and being with the sheep. I'm like, every year I'm like, oh my gosh, like another year it's gone. I was like, oh my god, I'm glad that's over, kind of thing. And then, like, I go next year, I'm like ringing up the farmer, like, do you still need someone, do you want help? Like, I was like that at the beginning of COVID as well, like when everything was kind of up in the air, and I was like, I'm gonna go back, do you need a hand, I'll come do night shifts, that's fine. So yeah, like, I think, like you said, just to reiterate what you said, the variety is important. And as long as people, especially if you're going for the vet med in particular, just make sure that you know what the university requirements are of the weeks and the hours and things, because that obviously is the biggest thing. But give yourself an opportunity to get a breadth of experience if you can. And if you need help, then hopefully if you contact the admissions people at those universities, they might be able to guide you a bit better. Or if you do know that their family contacts, potentially utilize that as well, because someone always seems to know someone, and they might be able to slot you in somewhere. So
yeah. I think I like kind of had that tick box of like, I've got to get clinical, and then I've got to get horses and stuff. And being where I am, I have kind of a similar problem. Like, I don't really have access to loads of farms, and I don't really have the transport either. So I remember just going online and looking at all the vets that were close to me, and then just calling every single one, being like, please take me. So a lot of those kind of ones I was able to walk to, and it was okay. And then I also got experience at Cats Protection, so like a rescue shelter type thing, and a cattery and kennels. And then I managed to get a couple of riding schools as well. So it was a bit of a mix, but I would say like it's really important if you can get work experience that is like every week for a few months. That I think that people don't really tend to consider that, and they consider just getting a chunk, like a block week, which is absolutely like understandable because you get it done in that short amount of time. But if you get a week's placement, I mean, over the course of say a few months, that really shows like a level of commitment that you can then use to back up why you want to be a vet if you get to like a personal statement and interview stage. So that's what I would really recommend. I think I did that for the kennels and cattery. I did it from my first work experience around that time, so February, all the way up until October, which was the application deadline time. So then I could say I got like 8 months of like regular exposure to animals. So I think that really helped my case when I was doing personal statement and stuff.
What you said about calling up the vet practice just like rejigged the memory. I remember like I would call them up and my mum would always say like, remember the name of the receptionist to like write in the email, because they'd always give you an email of someone like who you need to contact, or the person who would organize like coordinate work experiences. So I always be like, oh, like, hey Lauren, and I'd like remember to write, oh, I've just spoken to Lauren on the phone, and then that just shows that you're like on it. Are there any tips that you would give to people who are doing work experience to like get the most out of their work experience?
Definitely like bring a little notebook, something, like just to make sure you are keeping little notes, like just a little one that you can stick in your pocket and have a pen to hand, because there will be things that you learn or you pick up. You might not understand them, but at least you've got them down. If you've asked me questions, it's just trying to be enthusiastic. And I think even going through the course, like you kind of have to have this constant feeling of like needing to be enthusiastic in place, but you need to show that you're engaged in it, and you need to show you're interested. It can be tiring, but it's worth it, because that's how you get the receptiveness from the people that you're working with. And like just offer to be helpful as well. Like I think sometimes you can feel a little bit like a bit of a wallflower sometimes, and you're kind of watching what's going on. They might, to be fair, if it's like a busy vet practice, for example, they might not necessarily have the space for you. And if they are quite small, and they're rushing around, you might feel like you're getting in the way, but you're not. Like they've offered to have you there. They want to have you there. You will help them. It's just they need to find things for you to do. And there'll also be things that potentially you won't be allowed to do everything because of your age. So, but when you say you are a vet student or a nursing student, you then would be allowed to do certain things because you're training. So don't feel disheartened if you're like, they're not actually letting you do like, I don't know, actually kind of maybe like scrubbing for a surgery or something really, really cool. And granted, don't compare yourself when you are in the application process. If you do know other people that are applying and they say, oh, well, I got to do this, this, and this on my work experience, don't compare yourself and what your experiences are. Take what you have learned from that experience and what you are going to apply to your application and what you apply to your interviews along. And the same thing goes throughout vet school as well. Like a lot of people will like, oh my God, I did my first cat spay. And it's like, that's a great milestone. That is a great achievement. But then when you've got people that are saying, I've managed to do like 54 cat spays over the course of like, however many months, it's like, it's great, it's fine. I've only been able to do one, but doesn't make you any less competent or anything like that either. So enjoy your work experience, make sure you keep notes, be active and engaging, and just don't compare your experience to other people's.
Yeah, completely agree with all of those. I think keep a diary. Oh my gosh, the amount of times I've said that to people applying, I'm like, keep a diary. Even if I remember just having my phone there and my little notes app, and every day I would like, have some time with the vet after a consult or something and just ask like a couple of questions. I think I badgered one of the vets like so much. I think he was getting a bit sick of me, but it showed that I was really enthusiastic. And yes, I couldn't understand most of what he was talking about, but it was still really interesting for me to know. And I think if you stay with one placement for like long enough, so say you do like a 2-week placement there, they start to trust you and give you more responsibility by the end because you're so eager and enthusiastic at the beginning. So I think it really helps build up a good impression of you. And I think the easiest way I found to not feel like I was getting in the way was just to ask, like, what can I do to help? Or even if you've seen the vet, for example, cleaning the consult table with some disinfectant after a consult, you could just take the initiative and do that yourself, and then it's one less thing for them to worry about, and they know that you're kind of engaged and you're taking initiative. So I think it's these kind of little things that really give you a good impression to the vet and keep you engaged, because it can be difficult to stay on it for 8 hours of the day when you don't really have anything to do except watch. Yeah.
And I do feel like vets like take an interest in like the pre-vet applications, like work experience, because they like want to try and get more people into the career. So I remember all the people that I were with, they were like, oh, like come and look at this. Like when they were doing a consult and saw like, I don't know, a skin infection, they'd be like, oh, this is called this, and then I write it down, and then they'd like ask me about it later, and I'd be like, oh, I've done some research and it's this, and he's like, yeah, well done. So I do feel like the majority of environments, like they are welcoming and they do want to like help inspire like the next generation of people to get involved. So like the next step of the application process, we've got all of our work experience, would be your personal statement. Do you remember I remember I asked you so many drafts of my personal statement. I was there going to my tutor like, oh, is this good? And I think one thing they were like, you've got to have a good opening, but you can't use the word passion. That's like the only two things I remember about my personal experience. They were like, don't use the word passion because everyone uses it, but you've got to have a gripping opening. So do you have any advice for personal statement writing? I know it's such a long time ago for all of us.
I was going to say, is this like reaching? No, it's fine. I do actually remember. So I had 11 drafts of my personal statement. And to be fair, it sounds scary, but actually it's like you just make loads and loads of little tweaks. And luckily, like I was saying before, we did have someone who was like an advisor, and she literally was hired to help us write our personal statements. And she was also simultaneously a history teacher as well, but she kind of moved up to our little UCAS office and was sitting there and helping us with all of our UCAS applications, going through it, cutting stuff down and helping us so much. But yeah, like you're saying, the openers need to be good. So the things to avoid for vetty in the vetty world are like, you know, ever since I was 3 years old, I've always wanted to be a vet. Like it's that generic, like everyone's going to say that kind of thing. But I think my opener was to do the fact that the dog that I grew up with, like unfortunately we had to put her to sleep, but she had some kind of level or form of like an MS kind of thing. And so I had made a point that I was very intrigued about, you know, learning about multiple sclerosis in dogs, and that is kind of spurred on, not my passion to avoid that word, but has kind of started me in thinking about, you know, a little bit more about how animals work and actually kind of the link between human and animal diseases and illnesses. So something along those lines I'd jazzed up. And then I found though with the personal statement, when they gave us a template in our school for everyone to use, and I was like, this template isn't matching up to what I think I need, because when I'd done my research, it was like, you need to talk about 70% of your work experience, and then maybe the other 30% is about your hobbies, your interests. I wrote some stuff about like some conferences I'd been to, like some books I'd read that were like science oriented, that sort of thing, and that was literally just at the end. But the bulk was kind of talking about transferable skills from my work experience. And so it was another one of those things where I was like, yeah, I'm going to ignore all of this. I'm just going to have to go and do my own thing. But it was a bit of you just need to make sure you stagger it and give yourself enough time. They started making us write our personal statements in the summer before the UCAS application started opening. So that works, because you do need to kind of be on it. And the more time you allow it, the more time you have for making loads and loads of drafts as well.
Yeah, definitely the earlier the better. And I think if you've kept that diary of all your work experience, then it's so helpful to just have a read through that, and it kind of brings back all of those, you know, emotions, that passion. You'll kind of get reminded of that, and then I think that's the best time to start writing it, because I think the way I started was literally just a stream of consciousness, like getting everything I could on the page. And then my reference writing, I had like the really long task of trying to cut that down because obviously not everything is completely relevant and some things are better than others. But if you just start by literally writing everything you can think of, I think that's a good start, and your diary would definitely help with that. I think we started ours really early as well, probably in summer, but I hadn't finished all my work experience, so it was a bit difficult. But if you have other experience, like you said, the conferences and books and things that you've read or been to, then you can definitely start writing a bit about that early on. Yeah.
And I do think what we've talked about a lot is the transferable skills, and that doesn't necessarily have to be vet related, because I did a lot of like dance, music, you know. I was head girl. Which I actually realized I came to vet school and everyone was head girl, so it wasn't really like a distinguishing factor.
Yeah, I felt that as well.
Yeah, so everyone was head girl and head boy, and I was like, oh, so this is what we just a congress of head girls and head boys, like 60 pupils. So just stuff like that, I was like, cool. Because I'd done all of that, it's given me the skills of, and the thing I found most on like placements or at open days is that they would say like communication. They were like, we have so many people who come in who are really smart, can like excel through the course, like theory wise, but then they get out into the real world and like talking to people, and then they like stumble being able to, you know, break down the scientific jargon into ways that owners can understand. So I think my whole like personal statement push was about like, take me because I'm good at communicating and I can do it because I've done this and this, like head girl, and I was like a St. John's ambulance corporal cadet, like teaching other people first aid. I was like, so I can communicate well. So I think you've just got to find like what your like unique selling point is, like what is going to make you different from other people. And you just got, I don't know, you just kind of, you got to be, I think the hardest thing about writing a personal statement is like hyping yourself up. You're like, you should take me because I'm great. And I think it's really hard to start writing that because it like you've never really written about yourself in that kind of light before. So I think so I think just you got to be your biggest fan. Really,
it is literally, I remember the teachers being like, you are selling yourself, like you have to, and you have to think that it is the programs are competitive, like no one's going to deny that they're competitive, and but that is not a reason for you to not think it's for you and to put people off. But you do have to find some sort of, you know, pick on your best attributes, reflect. It's a lot of self-reflection about things. And like you say, I think the communication factor is really big, and they even drum that into us once you're on the program. So that would definitely be a big thing to take for people. It's even things just like general, although it sounds like buzzwordy, it's kind of like, you know, your teamwork, your leadership, those sort of things. Any instances that you can show that you did that, that's amazing. Like you say, it doesn't have to be that you did it in your work experience. You know, you can do it, and those are the sort of things that you would take to interview with you and be like, when you're having your interviews, you know, this is what I did and this is what you say.
I do think the buzzwords are useful though, because even if you're not saying them, it's like, I got this skill, but how is it helping me? I think that's what they want to know. Like they do want to see the buzzwords, but they don't want it to be like, I can teamwork. I'm good at teamwork. It's like, how are you good at teamwork? Provide examples for it. Sorry, Jahnavi, you're going to say something.
I was just going to say, like, even I remember in my first personal statement, because I applied twice, so I had to write it twice. In my first one, I wrote quite a bit about working in a shop, because I'd had a couple of jobs just like in retail, and that was also like great for communication, like public facing, teamwork, you know, like it gave me so many skills that you wouldn't necessarily, I don't know, consider when you're applying for vet school, but they're so relevant and they're so important. So I think like drawing on any of those experiences that you've had would be helpful.
Lovely. Okay, so I think before we get on to like the interview stage, we've all kind of had slightly different pathways than the not conventional, but the one that people assume. So Steph, you did the Gateway. Do you mind talking a bit about like how the Gateway program is different from the 5-year course?
Yeah, of course. So I know it's changed a little bit now since I did it, but essentially it's a foundation year, but they're only run at RVC in Nottingham currently, but hopefully they might start branching out to some other vet schools. Essentially, it's kind of almost like having a catch-up year. So the aim of the Gateway program is it's with widening participation criteria. So for anyone that doesn't really know what WP stuff is, essentially they look at sort of socioeconomic aspects of people that are applying to the course. So for example, like I was saying before, like I'm the first in my household to go to university, so my parents haven't been. If you've got low household income, there was polar scores, like postcode scores, and sort of contextual school stuff about, you know, how good is your school for attaining and getting people to university. And also things like, have you been on the summer school, which I'd also been on as well. And the entry requirements were a lot lower. And so, like I was saying before, like I had my little blip at A levels. So when it was still like AS and A2 at my AS levels, I'd done really well in my art and my biology, chemistry, and my history. I had like 3Ds. And so it was like, you can't really be applying to a 5-year vet med program with those grades when the entry requirements are like 3 A's or 2 A's and a B. So that's when I had that reevaluation, thought, you know what, actually, I'm only going to apply for the Gateway program because it's the only one that I can see myself, you know, like that's what I really want to do. And I didn't really want to consider pursuing like zoology or anything at that point. And I thought, you know what, going to risk it for a biscuit, let's go. And so the entry requirements were CCC for that. And so my A-level results in the end were BBC, so I completely was fine getting in. And it was useful because it allows more access to people. So not just people that have come through A-levels, but people that have done potentially diplomas, people that have gone through college routes and have got other degrees. They can all come and do the Gateway program, and then it brings you up to speed to then go into the vet med program in the first year once you've completed that year. And the sort of modules that I had, so these are the ones sort of modules that don't exist in it anymore, but I had like an evolution module in my first year. Who's going to be treating dinosaurs? But it was really, really interesting, and it was really, really cool to like, because the lecturers and the people that we worked with were really, really cool. But then a lot of it was about biology, and it was like cellular biology and applying comparative anatomy and things like that as well, which was really good. So it was almost like one up from, it's definitely still like one up from doing A-level biology and doing like in general A-level sciences, but it's kind of that sort of thing to kind of coerce everyone together, so then you're feeling prepared when you go into Vet Med 1. And then Vet Med 1 is supposedly a little bit more of a breeze because you've already covered a lot of the stuff. Some of the lectures we actually did repeat, so some of the animal husbandry stuff we did in Gateway we definitely did again in first year. So yeah, I would recommend it definitely to people that I had worries obviously about my grades, but also just worries about like, did I think that I was actually going to succeed on the vet course? Because I think you still go through having a bit of a level of a bit of self-doubt. You've had to do all this work kind of by yourself, push yourself through it. And you get to the crux of, you know, A-levels is a stressful time. And I'm sure we can all agree, like it is, takes its toll and it's a lot. And you think that you're deciding your future, you know, you want to know that you're making the right decision. And I think that program for me helped me with that, and I thought if I can pass that year I can do the rest of the degree. So that was my thought process behind doing it, and so I do recommend them.
And Jahnavi, you said that you had to apply twice. What was your journey?
Yeah, so the first time I applied I didn't get the grades in maths and chemistry, so I think I got A, B, B, and my offers were 3 A's or A, B. So there was a moment there where I hadn't really like considered like what I was going to do, and I had to spend a few days kind of thinking about, okay, do I go 3 clearing or do I try this again? And I don't know, it was kind of a blow to my confidence for sure, but I was like, I can't imagine doing anything else. I've done like a whole summer's worth of work experience. Like I really just can see this for me. So I decided to resit and take a gap year. But that was really good. Like I enjoyed myself. I got some more work experience and I got a job and I just, you know, hustled. But yeah, I resat and then I got in. So it was definitely worth it. And I think I learned a lot of valuable lessons during that gap year of just resilience and perseverance. And it was difficult to an extent because I could see my friends who'd gone to uni like having the best time, but I think that kind of just spurred me on because I was like, okay, well, now I've seen what university can be like and how fun it can be. Like it's making me even more motivated to get there. So and yeah, I did manage to do some work experience that was a lot more exciting I think than what I'd done previously. So because I had that job, I saved up and I got this veterinary internship in South Africa. So I went out there for a month and worked with the worked with like the vets out there in vet practices, but also in game reserves and things like that. So it was such a different experience to any kind of work experience I'd done here. And it made me realize kind of what I wanted to do as a vet. I think that was like my initial trigger into thinking like I want to work in conservation or I want to work with exotics. So that kind of made me change my mind about even what university I wanted to go to. So I think I really gained so much more from that extra year than I lost, definitely.
No, I do think it's really interesting because a lot of time, like, people just assume that you just go to university and you start the degree program. But then, you know, I think there are a lot of people who, you know, don't make the grades or don't have the work experience like that, get rejected at the first hurdle. And for them, they're like, all of their friends, because obviously vet men is very competitive, like all of their friends are going off to the degrees that they want. And you're just kind of there like, oh, I didn't expect this. I didn't know what to expect. So like planning, because like, there's also another route, because Gateway is one route, reapplying is another route, and then there's another route where you do another biology based degree and then you apply as like a postgraduate course on an accelerated course. So you'll do like, our vet med program is 5 years, so you do like 1 and 2 years combined, and then you can do it that way. So I was the same. I had the grades, but I didn't have enough work experience, so I didn't get through in the first year. And then I got A, B, and then I had to decide if I wanted to reapply for, like, initially take a gap year and reapply, or if I wanted to do a whole nother degree. So like I had a degree set up until like the week before to do a biology degree, and then I was like, no, I want to reapply. Like it was like such a big moment. I was like, do I trust myself enough to re-sit chemistry, which was
literally,
like, do I trust myself enough do I believe in myself enough to be able to take the year out? Yes, all my friends are going. Yes, I'm going to be by myself. I can make new friends. But like you said, I think the gap was one of the best things that happened to me. You get money, first time I've ever had a disposable income, so that was the best thing.
Nice.
Also just like the skills of like managing your time and being by yourself. I was like, I have a year to do whatever I wanted. So I was like, cool, so we're going to work. I worked at Battersea Cats and Dogs Home. I worked with stables. I just did anything. I worked at Battersea Park Children's Zoo. I was like, I'm just going to do whatever. And I just applied to like the most random jobs, and I got some and I didn't get some. And I think that sort of like honing in on your skills of working in the world, but also like just time management and doing what you want, I think are some valuable skills that people might not get if they go straight to university. So I do think a lot of people go to university and then they get sad, like they want to go to university, they get sad that they can't get in. But there are, like, the three of us have all gone through like non-conventional routes, so it's possible. And look at us, we're all like on the program now. I do think that,
you know what, I wish that there was more emphasis on it's okay to have a gap year.
Yeah,
because there, like you both said, like there's this weird, you get so het up about missing out on things and not being in the same vein of your year group, that it's really like, it really blindsides you. Like you shouldn't be worrying at that point about what everyone else is doing. Like we said before, even like with work experience, with anything, don't compare yourself and don't compare your path to other people's, because if you have a plan in mind, you should go with it. And I know I've got friends that have done the degrees beforehand. And to be fair, like one of my thoughts with the Gateway program, I was like, what's another year? I'm already going to go into like a 5-year degree.
Yeah, what
is another year, if long as it furthers my learning and also pushes me to challenge myself, and you know, and actually sets me up for what I want to do. And at the end of the day, like I'm speaking to like loads of other vet students, a lot of people do take gap years, and it's quite normal. But it doesn't seem to be that way if you're someone potentially applying for any other degree, or like I've not really heard of other people doing it if they're going to be a doctor or going, you know, into law or something else. Like people tend to just do that jump to uni and head straight off.
Yeah, definitely. I think that because up till year 13 you have a plan. Like every year you know exactly what you're going to do, and then you're faced with a gap year or the option of a gap year, and it's like this empty space. And I think it freaked me out definitely at the beginning. It was kind of overwhelming to think like, oh my gosh, I could do anything. Like that is really freeing, but also really terrifying because it's just so many options. So I think that, but then I think if you have that, if you like step back and look at your kind of end goal of you want to be a vet or you want to work with animals, or, you know, it kind of helps give that whole space of time a bit of direction. And that definitely helped me because I had like a goal at the end. And I think the fact that we both resat and like had to study Definitely. I mean, it wasn't fun, and it definitely was like so much more independent than I'd ever had to be.
Yeah.
But it kind of, gave you some kind of consistency in the year. So
I also think it gives you resilience. Like all your, I just think having to reset an A level that you've already done is the most resilience I've ever had to learn. Like being able to schedule yourself to like properly still be studying for an A level. I think I commend anyone who does it. I think it's really difficult. Okay, so quickly moving on to the interview process. You didn't do interviews because you were on the gateway.
No, still did.
Oh, you still did interviews? Because I felt like my RVC interview was the most fun interview I did. So it was the third interview I did. So I felt like I'd already done two. So I was like, I know I'm doing, but I just felt it was the most fun. Like I felt the other ones were really like one of my interviews was in like the crypt of a church, like underground, and I had a really bad cough, so I was like quite ill. I had like a bacterial infection, but I was like, I don't know if I'll get another interview. I have to go for it. So I was there, and the doctor was like, "You're fine, but you just like don't sound fine." So I was there, like, and my cough was just reverberating. It was like church, and I was trying to do. It was like half written. It was like a written station, speaking station, written station, speaking station, and I was just there like trying to embarrass myself. I was like, I just want to go home, I'm so ill, but I did it and it was fine. But no, I definitely felt like the RVC one, like the atmosphere was just more fun. Like, yeah, do you guys have any like memorable interview experiences?
I just think, like, so again, like, because I only applied for the gateway, like, I've only had a chance to experience the RVC's MMI process, but the thought of doing a panel interview was like a proper fear. Like I don't think I would have felt ready for that. But the MMI interviews, and like anyone will say that they are really, really good, because you have that freedom to be like, if you think you really have messed up on a station, you have like 5 other stations of opportunity where they don't know you, they've not seen you yet, you can start again and start afresh, and that's really comforting. But I remember when I did my interviews, we had 2 written stations and 4 verbal, like, speaking with a staff member stations. And I was on one of the written stations first, and it was like it was a dispensing question or something like that. And I just remember I was so nervous, and I was like shaking as I was writing, and then I was shaking as I was putting my little paper into the little ballot box thing they had there. And so someone helped me and took it from me and said, "It's okay." And I was like, "Thank you." Like, I was so stressed out, and it wasn't until I felt like I'd started on the actual verbal stations that I was like, oh, I can like finally take a deep breath. And it's good, they offer rest stations as well, which is nice. But I could finally just be like, that wasn't too bad, that's not too bad, I can do this is fine, it's all right. And then the weird thing is, obviously now coming through the other end of it, is that they're the same people that are going to be teaching you. They seem like the most, like, you think they're like, you don't know these people, so you're like, oh my gosh, they are so scary, like I don't like, it, and they make you feel comfortable, but it's still, you just feel intimidated. But now you see them around campus, and I'm like, sure, you interviewed me, like it's so chill. And because we even have like obviously students, some ambassadors at interview as well, it's very likely that you might then bump into those people again even when you start. But I think the interview process in general is quite good. But definitely the fact that they offer that station way of doing it really helps with the not feeling like you've completely flummoxed your interview and it's going to be the end of the world, as I probably may or may not have felt after a panel interview.
I remember so I found that every interview that I had at every university was so different. So I had like 4, but they weren't all like MMI, they weren't all panel. There was such a mix of things. And I mean, on one hand, it was really nice not to have to like just be repeating yourself every single time, and it was nice to get a feel for the university by the way that they interviewed. But on the other hand, it was like, oh my gosh, like I've got this practical interview and then I've got to talk to a panel, and it was a lot of different like styles to get used to. But I think for me, by the like I'd done a couple of interviews, I'd kind of got into the swing of it, and then by the time I had to do it all the second time, I was like, it's fine, I've done this. So I think that interviews are like they can be really, really enjoyable if you kind of let go of that those nerves. Obviously everyone is nervous and I was super nervous, but if you kind of in the moment are just passionate about what you're saying, then you get so much out of it, even though it's a test. So but yeah, preparing for interviews was definitely like a massive thing that my school pushed, and I don't know how many practice interviews I did just with friends or really even on myself. So I think, yeah, preparing is like so important for that.
But I think again, you've just got to be your biggest fan. Like, this is your one shot. You just got to go for it. Like, you can't, yeah, you're nervous, but you've just got to show them why you deserve to be there. And most of the questions are like, I mean, they depend like year to year, but a lot of them are just like conversational. Like, they may not be like the ethics questions. They may not be a right or wrong answer. They just want to hear your thought process. So I think I found them quite enjoyable because I was like, I know that I can't get it wrong. So let me have a go. Because there's not that, what I could say, everyone's got their own opinion about how different things should be handled. So if you just, you know, say an opinion and then you can say, and I think this because, and then you like give some ideas, then you can like have a little dialogue and then they can ask you a bit more about it. And I think that's more of an enjoyable, like it was my first sort of like intellectual conversation. And I was like, oh, look at me go.
You do have to practice like not internalizing your thoughts the whole time as well. Like you have to, if you're someone who doesn't necessarily like to speak out loud, it helps though to try and practice it beforehand, to be like, because the only way that they can tell what you're doing or what you're thinking is if you say it to them.
Exactly.
And so I remember I had a station where you have to kind of like guess what something was in front of you, and you know, you kind of have to kind of pick at things and talk through things, and you know, just kind of definitely just talk through your thought process. You can't say anything wrong, you know, like there's going to be things that they're not expecting you to be experts. The whole point you're applying there is the fact that you're then eventually hopefully going to be an expert, but they just need to engage where they think that your level is at, not only just in your knowledge but also just where is it's that level of passion, your curiosity. It's like, can you ask the right questions? Can you, you know, are you engaged? What is, you know, and especially for any of the sort of animal, for the vetty careers, like it's about problem solving and things. And so, you know, you need to be able to kind of speak and collaborate and figure out how do you get to the bottom of something. And so doing that in your interview and practicing beforehand, like Jahnavi said, if you're practicing, whether that be with family, with friends, with a teacher or an advisor or someone, just keep doing that. Like I practiced with an advisor, but I just found we just Googled like vet interview questions, which are very generic, but you know, you might not ever get asked them, but it's still good for you to just try and practice them. And also look at research. If you're going to a particular university, look at what their research currently is around, or look at what's big in the animal community or the vet community, or you know, what's going around. A lot at the time that I was applying, it was still a lot about like brachycephalic dogs, stuff like that. So it's also important to have those things, because those are the sort of things that you can kind of feed into your interview if the point arises in conversation, and it shows that you're more engaged.
Definitely. I think like if you find out what people are talking about in the community, and I remember just making a list of like, okay, brachycephalic breeds or tail docking or something, and I just wrote what I thought, and this was before interviews, and I decided my opinion on those things before I got to interviews, because even if you're not asked about that specific issue, you might be asked something really, really similar to it, and you might have a very similar opinion either way. Because I think nerves can really make a difference in interviews, and they can just make you go completely blank. So if you know what you think about something before they ask you, then that will help you out a lot, definitely.
I remember I was so scared. I was like, I don't know anything about farms. So my mum would get me Farmers Weekly, the magazine. So I was like flicking through Farmers Weekly. I would like Google vet times. I was reading through DEFRA. I was like, I was doing everything I can, because people were like, you've got to know what's going on in the community. And I was like, okay, so how do I do that? How do I find out what's going on in the community? But no, magazines, it was Vet Times, it was DEFRA and Farmers Weekly. They were the three that I was like looking through, like, oh, what's going on? And also if you just like Googling random words, like I remember like badger culling, obviously that was like a big issue. I was like, badger culling. And then even if it's not like a specific like veterinary related article, just people's opinions about topics, you know, public opinions, it's important to get different like stakeholders or different people who's got different interests involved into it. So moving on, because we are all Animal Aspirations ambassadors, I just want to talk a bit about like what is the role of Animal Aspirations in promoting biological, pathways and entries into university. So Steph, do you want to speak a bit about your role as an Animal Aspirations member?
Sure. So so the role that I'll be finishing up sad times this year will be the school bookings and liaison. So that role was formulated because we wanted to function a little bit like our widening participation teams that we have in the access team at RVC. And so you need someone there who's going to be the point of contact to try and contact schools, get people involved, and then also try and arrange these bookings that we do with our workshops and things. And I think for all of us, and probably the main reason why we're all involved in Animal Aspirations is obviously we are drawing on a lot of these experiences that we've even spoken about today, and seeing that there are students that are still going through the same things and can relate a lot more to what we've been through. But hopefully if we can do some work that helps them either avoid that or makes the process easier for them, then we know that we've done our job. And particularly with the schools workshops, it's more about providing opportunities and experiences for students who may or may not otherwise have contact with animals. At least a lot of us have been able to, like we've said, a lot of people that apply to some of the veterinary programs or animal courses have had some level of contact with animals at some point in their careers, but it kind of needs to be less stigmatized that just because you haven't touched an animal in your life that you could never see yourself doing this degree or this profession. And likewise, just because, if there are cultural differences or socioeconomic factors that are impeding your ability to do one of these programs, that shouldn't be a barrier in this day and age for you to be doing these sort of things. So like recently you've been doing some workshops with some schools and doing some seminars and things, and it's really, really rewarding because even if you've changed the opinion of one pupil, like I think that's still really, really important. It's and it's great to have discussions with some of them. We had a pupil at one of the schools, and we kind of had raised the discussions about how being Muslim, how that is impacted by wanting to go into the veterinary degree and what animals you potentially would work with or you'd be allowed to come into contact with and that sort of thing. And I was saying, to be frank, the position in the profession, there aren't a lot of BAME people, and therefore we don't have those voices represented very well or very highly. And so it's those sort of things that we need to start thinking about and start discussing, and being more culturally sensitive and tolerant and willing to support these people. And so I think as much as we all have our roles and everything, we have our bigger parts to play. I know that the bigger picture is that we are providing these smaller little opportunities for people, and it's giving them opportunities to see people that they look like and people that they could potentially relate to. And that's the biggest thing. We all probably have said that we wish that there was someone who either looked like us or someone that has our background, someone that you could look up to a bit more, and I hope that's what we will be and continue to be as students going forward for some of these younger students that are going through it as well.
Yeah, because I remember when I was at interviews, and like open days and like offer holder days, I would look around and I'd be like, only one. Like, what can we do about it? And then I remember I came to RVC, and obviously we have like quite a large international like population. But then I remember seeing like BAME ambassadors who now I like know, but I was like, oh my God, there's two. I was like, look, there's two. And we were so excited. So we were like, might have to be RVC, because it just made me feel, obviously I didn't know them and I didn't know, what year they're on or like what program they're on or anything. I literally just saw them with an ambassador t-shirt on, like from the other side of campus, and I was like, oh my God, this is it.
It didn't hit me until I went back to speak to some so there's a teacher that I was quite close with at my secondary school that really helped me throughout the whole of my application process, and I would go to her for advice. And I went back to see her, and I did say to her, one of the things I do remember it really vividly, I said to her, I was like, no one looks like me. And it was really strange because I was like, I've come from a secondary school that was like multi-faith, multicultural. The area around me has so many different cultures in it that RVC was a culture shock. And I was also shocked because I was like, I'm in the middle of London, so how has this happened?
Yeah.
So it didn't all compute. So I was like, oh no. And actually I think that potentially the numbers on like the biosciences programs are probably a little bit more even, but definitely in the veterinary side of the programs it's not very, it's not even at all. But it's funny, like the thing it took for that to make me realize like just how much actually that did mean to me. Actually seeing someone that I'm like, oh my gosh, like yeah, we could, you know, have a chat for ages. Maybe I'd find out someone else was from the Caribbean, you know, and it's like, oh, this is cool, like, you know, and you have that level of relatability with someone that, you know, it just makes your relationships and your experiences a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. I think I didn't even realize that I was the same. I didn't realize until I was in university and talking to a group of like BAME students who are my friends, and we were kind of like discussing how there was no like society for like South Asian culture, and how that was like really surprising. And then we started one and I was like, wow, like I didn't realize how much this meant to me until I found other people who like kind of voiced it. I think I always felt it inside, but until someone says it, I think it's quite difficult to notice that there isn't something there. So yeah, absolutely, like representation. I think Animal Aspirations is, I mean, from my perspective, being at kind of a grassroots level of what going to workshops and coordinating that, I think that representation is so important, definitely.
And just, you said you're a workshop ambassador. Is there anything that you like, what's the thing that you enjoy about going to workshops? Or is there anything that you remember that you're like, oh?
Yeah, I mean, I have always worked with kids like with tutoring and things like that. So I think that is the most gratifying, fulfilling part of what I do. So I'm workshop leader, like you said, and that means I coordinate activities in the workshops. So we split the student group into smaller groups and then work with each one on different activities. So that might be clinical scenarios, so a bit problem solving, or a bit more practical, like bandaging up a dog's leg. Normally it's a stuffed toy dog, but, or looking at microscope slides and specimens and things. But I remember one workshop, I was working with a group of students on the microscope slides, and I think that they were all friends, and there was one person, like one kid, who wasn't really friends with this group, so he wasn't really engaging, and I think he was a bit shy as well. So I don't know, I was like, everyone else seems to be really getting a lot out of this, so I brought out the specimens, and I mean, all of the kids' faces just light up when you bring out a plastinated heart or something. They're like, what is that? That's so cool. But I remember handing it to him, and I think it was a combination of him being fascinated by this object, but also everyone wanting to hold it, and then he was the one who got to hold it first, and it really engaged him. And I don't know, it was nice to see that change in his kind of overall behavior, because even if he didn't want to go and be a vet or work with animals or do biology after that, I think that he got a lot more out of the whole experience than he was. So that's one thing that really sticks in my mind. Yeah.
That's so sweet.
It was very cute.
How can schools get involved if they want us to come and visit them?
So to get involved, we would like it if people either can check out the website, people can have a look at our social media as well, but then also if you contact us directly, and so it's just our Animal Aspirations email, which we can sign posts and things, they can contact us and we can just sit and arrange whether or not they want to do one of our traditional workshops. Because of COVID and obviously the way that things have ended up, it was a lot harder for us to actually start doing or keep up and maintain doing workshops and things, and schools have kind of, you know, I do feel for them because they've been trying to still potentially deal with these sort of engagement things. They want students to still be considering careers, but it's so hard when they can't even be in school. But hopefully things are looking a bit better and things are opening up, so fingers crossed we'll actually be able to start running in-person workshops again, which I know that we have slowly started phasing them back in again. But also we were kind of considering, you know, for some of the schools over the past couple of months, we've still just done some virtual seminars and things, and whether that's just kind of, we just want to have a chat, we want you to have a chat with our students about veterinary careers or just animal related careers, or just kind of your experiences as students, and you know, how did you, you know, a bit like this conversation, how did you get into university, that sort of thing. We're willing to offer those sort of more tailored programs as well, I think. So yeah, just get in contact with us via email. Our main base is obviously still with the Royal Veterinary College, but because we have been slowly expanding, and people will be aware of the expansion hopefully by the time this comes out. We have been expanded to other or pretty much all of the other vet schools as well. So hopefully, if this does have reach to other people in those areas and you're not in London, you should be able to find a Animal Aspirations group local to you, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think all of us are really desperate to get back out there and start doing seminars and workshops and things. We're really excited, so it'll be really nice if like people get in touch and let us do that.
Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation, but I have one thing that I want to like end on, and that's, do you have any like life mottos or quotes that you like help inspire you when you're feeling down, or like have helped you get to this stage of your career so far? Because I always think it's really interesting learning about other people's like philosophies.
I think for me, it's very much that like opportunity is everything. Like I think there are times I throughout the course of doing the degree, there were never times, I don't think anyone does want to regret doing anything or missing out on anything or not stepping up and saying, oh yeah, I want to do this, and you know, trying to figure out ways to overcome hurdles or barriers just for something stopping you for doing things. Like there are experiences that I've had at uni that I probably would have otherwise not had, you know, like even it was great once I started uni. It's obviously a really long course and it's really hard sometimes like maintain a job. Finances was still a bit of a thing for me that I was feeling like I might have to struggle with. Obviously still applied for student loans and that sort of thing, but also just having extra jobs and stuff like that would help facilitate me being able to do other things. So I've been able to go on tours and go and see parts of Europe with the hockey team, and that's been great. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't go to uni. I was able to go, I applied for a grant with SAVMA, and then myself and my best friend managed to go and see an animal welfare conference in Germany. And I was like, that was so cool. Like it was just a weekend in Munich, but like it was lovely that I had that ability to travel, which I potentially otherwise wouldn't have had I not been doing this degree. And you know, there are so many like amazingly bright, talented people and staff members and people that support you in throughout the programs. And so, you know, you have that network and you can utilize it. But I would just be like, if an opportunity arises for people, consider the options, kind of weigh it up, figure out if it's good for you right now or not. But for the most part, do try and take things, because, you know, I just wouldn't want people to go through thinking that they regretted. I didn't want to sit there and be like, oh, get to the end of the green, but I wish I had done that. I wish I had done that. But I think I've taken, you know, grabbed the ball by the horns for a lot of things. And, you know, have managed to make it through the end and out the other side. So now I've got to try and push myself to take opportunities when I'm actually a vet. And, you know, try and not limit yourself, make some plans, set yourself up some aspirations. The whole point of us, you know, set yourself some goals, set yourself some aspirations, look forward to things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like for the majority of people, I guess, who are going into university, maybe straight from school or like at this age, it's a really exciting time where you don't have anything really like tethering you to one place, and you don't have, obviously you have responsibilities, but you don't have like necessarily bills to pay. You know, it's all of the kind of things that you have to deal with when you're like a working adult, and you don't have to deal with them right now. So I think make the most of that time, because it's short and it's so unique and there are so many opportunities, and if you don't see any, then there's always the opportunity to create them. So I think that like that would be my kind of advice. Just make the most of this time where you can just focus on yourself and literally do whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Oh, that was lovely. I really like that. That's a really good quote. Well, thank you so much both for joining me. I know you guys are very busy. You know, Steph, you're about to be a vet.
I know, it's mad. I can't believe it.
The world. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk through what I think is one of the scariest parts. Like I remember at the RVC Open Day, they were like, the hardest part is getting in. And I think it's a lot of self-belief and like the steps, and there's just a lot. It's like a long period of time. It's not like you get an answer immediately. It's like you do the application, then you got to wait like a month and a bit, and then you get an interview, and then you got to wait like 6 weeks, and so it's a long period of stress. So I think, you know, hearing our stories of how we've made it through and now we're on the program and you've successfully completed the program. I think it's just, hopefully it will be inspirational for, you know, someone who is interested in this to hear 3 people who are doing it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. No, it's been lovely to talk it all through. It's just reflective, just reminiscing.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, well, bye. Well, I hope you found this episode useful. There was a big focus on the application process, but I hope it has shone a light onto the different pathways that you can do to get into veterinary. If you want to find out more, then check out the Animal Aspirations website, www.animalaspirations.com, and check out our student booklet. Here we have lots of information about the application process and what you need to do at each stage. If you're a school and you want to have us come and visit you, then get in touch. Email us at animalaspirations@rvc.ac.uk.